It's 1 minute past 7 p.m. This is the Black Hot Fire News Update with me, Dimori. I have a lot lined up for you. We'll be looking at what has been happening throughout the whole of Africa today. And of course, since we were here last night, a lot has been happening. We're going to be looking at some of those headline hitters and what was really hitting the headlines in most part of Africa. But today, before I start with the news, I had a special coverage on what has been sparking the positive change in Kenya's economy and how long will it last? Over the past few months, over the past few weeks to be specific, the Kenya's economy was on a downward trajectory, but it looks like it has been recovering over the. And when I say recovering, I mean a drop in prices of basic commodities, a drop in the price of fuel today, the Kenyan shilling gaining massively against the US dollar, and a lot of other things which I'll be mentioning. So we are going to be looking at some of the reasons that might be causing this. What could really be the cause of this sudden turnaround of the economy that a few months ago looked like it was going down? What could be the reason for this sudden turn? But before that, we had other things happening in other parts of Africa, which I'll mention and I'm going to get into later. For example, we had Kenya's president reaffirm police force to Haiti. This is despite the resignation of Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry a few days ago, and the warnings that have been coming fast, thick and fast from the people of Haiti and the gangs telling Kenyans not to do there. We're also going to be talking about how Nigeria has opened borders with Nigeria. I know Maria is talking about this at the moment, so I'm just going to mention it. We're also going to be looking at how at least 50 migrants, we're going to be looking at how about 50 migrants died on a coming from Libya. Those are African migrants wanted to cross over to Spain. Now they're dead. We're going to be talking about them too. We're also going to be looking at how 7 million people have been displaced in the DRC and how the humanitarian crisis goes on. A humanitarian crisis that is happening in DRC that nobody's talking about. We're going to be looking at the 7 million people who have been displaced, especially from the Goma and the North Kivu region, with deaths every day, and the many rebel groups, over 100 rebel groups carrying out operations there. I'm trying to share my live on YouTube, on the WhatsApp chat, so that is why I was looking a little distracted, but I'm done with that. So we're also going to be looking at how Tinubu has said that he won't pay ransom for kidnapped victims. This is after 287 kids were kidnapped in Nigeria, and the kidnappers were asking for ransom, and why Tinubu said that he's not going to pay ransom for nobody. We're also going to be talking about how Liberians are celebrating their dead 10 years after Ebola. Ebola wiped out so many people in Liberia and how they were getting celebrated today. And lastly, we're going to be looking at how what Putin said to the French president after the French president raised concerns. Emmanuel Macron raised concern over Russia's presence in Africa and what Putin said back to him. But before that, let us look at what has been sparking the positive change in Kenya's economy and how long do you think it is going to last. First, today the IPRA is the body in charge of energy, petroleum, and anything to do with energy in Kenya. It is called the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority. Announced a drop in the price of fuel, that is diesel and petrol, the single most drop by since 2020. That is the single most single day drop since 2020. So it dropped by 7 shillings and diesel dropped by 5 shillings. So let us start with energy and petroleum. Over the past 2 months, 2-3 months, the and gas in the country has been going down. It has been getting better. It was high. It has been getting better as the months have been going. And I was asking myself, what could be really the cause of this, knowing very well the kind of leaders we have. So I was asking myself this question on what is sparking that positive deviation, positive change in the price of petroleum products in the country. And my first suspicion, of course, was that the price of petroleum products in the global market has gone down. That was what I suspected. As that was my first suspicion, that it was not really the price of fuel and gas in Kenya that was going down. It was the price of fuel and gas in the international market that was going down. Nothing to do with Kenya. It was the international market prices for fuel and gas, because Kenya imports a huge chunk of its, if not all, a huge chunk, if not all of its petroleum products. That was my first suspicion, that it might be that the country, the price of the change was not in Kenya, but the change was global. So I did some research, tried to look at the graphs and the numbers of the price of gas in the international market, and I was shocked to find out that the price of gas and petroleum product has not gone down. It has in fact gone up over the past few months, with light crude oil going up in the last 6 days, going up in the last 3 months, and going up in the last 12 months. It went up, then went down. It went up to some point. It went up until May, then went down until July, then went up until October, then went down until January, and it has now been going up since January. That is light crude oil in the international market. Then I checked on Brent crude oil in the last 6 days. The last 6 days, it has been going up and down, getting to its lowest prices on 8th, 11th, and 12th, and having its highest price in the last 11 days, in the last 6 days today. In the last 3 months, Brent crude oil has been going up, going down on January, then going up on Feb, and then going down again on Feb, then going eventually up in March. In the last 6 months, light crude oil, it has also been going up and down, but since December, it has been going up. I looked at natural gas, which we don't use that much, but also part of what we use in Kenya. Natural gas has been going down. It has been on a downward trajectory over the last 6 days, reaching its lowest today. Over the last 3 months, it has been on a downward trajectory also. Since January to March, it has been going down. The prices have been going down. And in the last 12 months, it has also been going down, with one of its lowest points over the last 12 months. So energy prices, if we look at crude oil, it has gone up by 1.72%. Brent crude has gone up by 1.51%, and natural gas has gone up by 1. So what that did was, it helped me do away with the theory that the price of gas has gone down in the global market. It in fact has not. It has in fact gone up, not down. So that made me eliminate the first theory that I had, that the price of fuel in the global market had gone down. Kenya imports fuel from several countries. It imports refined petroleum primarily from United Arab Emirates, that is the UAE. It imports $2.96 billion of petroleum products from the UAE. It imports 631 million worth of petroleum products from Saudi Arabia, 543 million US dollars from India, 247 million US dollars from Netherlands, and 237 million US dollars from Oman. So Basically, Kenya gets majority of its petroleum products from the UAE. This brought up my second theory. What if the price of gas has gone down? The price of petroleum products has gone down in the UAE, and what we are experiencing in Kenya is just a trickle down effect of the price of petroleum products going down, where Kenya sources its petroleum products. And so I decided to check the fuel prices in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, in the United Arab Emirates, in Dubai, and look to see if maybe the price of oil has gone down there, and now what we are experiencing in Kenya is a trickle down effect, and the government is trying to take credit for it, while in real sense it is not the one that was responsible for the drop. But what we are seeing is just but a trickle down effect. So I went, did my research, looked at Saudi Arabia, which is one of the importers, our biggest importers, and I was shocked again when my second theory was deconstructed. So initially, Saudi Arabia has in fact raised oil prices over the last few days. It has raised oil prices, it actually raised oil prices for Asia and for other countries. This is following the extension of the OPEC's production cut agreement. OPEC is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. So they formed this whole cartel called OPEC, and now they are able to control their prices because they act in unison. So the second theory that the price of fuel and oil in Kenya, petroleum product, was going down because the cost had gone down in their source country, that is the UAE, was also deconstructed by these graphs that I'm sharing on your screen. Because indeed, in fact, the price of natural gas, Brent crude oil, and light crude oil had gone up, not down. And so I decided to test another theory, because all the theories I had for why the price of petroleum products was going down were getting deconstructed. So I decided to look at the oil prices, petroleum products prices in other countries in Africa. Maybe we are thinking that maybe we are thinking that Kenya is doing better. It is the fuel prices in Kenya are better. What about the other countries in Africa? Is it something that is happening overall, or is it a distinctive case? So I did my third theory and looked at the price of petroleum products, the price of gas, the price of fuel in other countries in Africa. And I was shocked again when my third theory was deconstructed, because the price of fuel in Africa is actually high in most countries. The only countries that had low prices of fuel was Libya, Algeria, and Angola, Egypt, Nigeria, and Sudan. And one thing about this, actually, the countries that had the price of fuel below $1 was Gabon, Liberia, Tunisia, Sudan, Nigeria, Egypt, Angola, and Algeria, as you can see on your screen. One similarity between all these countries is that, especially the last four, is that the last five, the last six, in fact, is that they are major producers of petroleum products. For an example is Libya. Libya imports a negligible amount of its domestic consumption. Most of its fuel, they get it from their own wells. Same with Algeria and most of these countries down here. So that also deconstructed my other theory that the price of petroleum products and gas had gone down in other countries in Africa, had gone down throughout Africa, and maybe what we were seeing in Kenya was just but a trickle down effect of the prices going down in other places. And so we went for that theory, which was the only plausible, was the only one remaining, and that seemed plausible at the moment, because all the others I had proved working. One being that the price of fuel had gone down in the international market, it had not. The other being that the price of petroleum products had gone down in the countries that Kenya sources its oil from, it had not. and the third one being that maybe it was other countries in Africa were also experiencing the same. And so I was left to look for a nexus between economic growth, external debt, and oil price. But before I go to that, the other positive shift that we had experienced was the US dollar, the Kenya shilling in comparison to the US dollar. Over the last couple of weeks, the Kenya shilling has gained massively. And when I say massively, I mean massively. Going from almost reaching 170 shillings to right now trading at 135 at the lowest. So that is a drop of 35 Kenya shillings over the last couple of weeks. And that is not a small drop. It is a massive, massive gain, a massive, massive gain by the Kenya shilling. This one I was able to identify easily what could have been the cause because I easily went to the Eurobond. So Kenya repaid part of its 2 billion USD Eurobond on Feb 21st. And what this did was, first, it eliminated the risk of debt default, and I'll tell you why this was important. So initially, people had feared that Kenya would go into a panic because everybody knew it didn't have enough money to pay the Eurobond. And so they expected the government to go into a panic and try to look for the dollars that are there in the market to go and use them to pay the Eurobond. And what this would have done is it would have created a shortage of dollars. And anybody who had dollars would sell them at a high price because eventually the government is in a panic mode. It is looking for the US dollar to settle the debt. So when Kenya got bailed out by the Bretton Woods, with the big daddy, and it was able to pay the 2 billion US dollar Eurobond, it ended the fear of the panic buying. And people who had confiscated, who had kept dollars in their houses, hoping that the government will go into a panic mode and look for the dollars, had no option but to release them. And so that first increased the supply of the dollar in the market. And as you know, with the supply and demand curve in the market, the forces of supply and demand in the market, of course, the dollar weakened because there was now enough dollars in the market, enough currency in the market because people are no longer holding to it. So that is one of the main reason why the Kenya shilling has been gaining against the US dollar, because the government got a loan. I don't know how they secured a loan from the big daddy and paid the debt, and that first increased the investor confidence. Investors are starting to run away because they knew Kenya did not have money to settle the Eurobond, and they knew that it might default, and once it default, it will go into the wrong side of the creditors who run Africa, by the way. And now investments won't go as they had expected, so they were starting to fear that. And so when it got the loan and settled the Eurobond, the investor confidence was boosted, the dollars were released into the market, and the Kenya shilling gained massively. And when I say massively, I mean massively. It was gained by 30 shillings over the past month, 1 month or 2 months. So it was easy for me to identify why the Kenya shilling was gaining massively. I attributed that to the Eurobond repayment, to the loan that they got to repay the Eurobond. And now the main challenge was for me to try and identify the nexus between the Eurobond repayment and the other things, the other positive trajectories that we have been seeing, including the fall in the prices of fuel, including the fall in prices of basic commodities in the country, such as flour. Ugali is the staple food in Kenya, and so flour is a basic commodity in Kenya. When you talk about basic commodities, the first one will be flour, maize flour, corn flour. So such products the prices have gone down. And so one of the reasons this might have been, actually the main reason this has been the case, the nexus between them is, once the Kenya shilling gain against the US dollar, Kenya being a country that imports everything, once that happened, then it was now shout out to Kay Williams. So once the Kenya shilling gain against the US dollar, Kenya being an importing country, of course, us importing everything, including fuel, it was going to go down because now the currency was a bit stronger. So my second question was, how long will it last? How long will this investor confidence last? How long will this bubble last? How long before the bubble get busted? And before that, my last theory on why this had been happening was the one that I proved to be true. So in political science and in politics, they have something they have this art that they have perfected so well of creating problems so that they can solve them. Because one, the price of fuel has not gone down in the international market. Two, it has not gone down in Africa. Three, there's no other plausible reason. So the reason is this, according to me, and you can, it is just but my 2 cents in this. You can give yours. There's something called manufactured crisis. I think the government was manufacturing a crisis so that it can solve it and then appear like the Robin Hood to the people. Because once the government took power, the price of everything went up. And when I looked at the reason why the price of everything went up, I couldn't find one. The same way when I looked at the reason why the price of everything went down, I still could not find one. Except for the Kenya shilling gaining against the US dollar. That one I could find the reason. It was because of the Eurobond. But for the fuel and for the other things, I couldn't find a reason. The same way I couldn't find a reason as to why it went up initially. So this is what I think. I think the government of Kenya manufactured a crisis, used what is called political opportunism, raised the price of everything, unbearable for Kenyans for the first few years of William Ruto's government. And now that the years are progressing and he's almost out of office, he's solving the problems he created. Raised the price of fuel and petroleum products to a sky high, and so now he's bringing it down and taking the credit. That is what I think. I think it was a manufactured crisis, political theatrics, political opportunism, creating problems so that you can solve them, because there is no any other plausible reason for the sudden shift. It has been a sudden shift. 2 months ago, everything was high. Right now, everything is going down. And so we are going to wait and see for how long this is going to go, how long the price of fuel is going to go down, how long the price of basic commodity is going to go down, how long the Kenya shilling will gain. For the Kenyan shilling, I can assure it is not going to be long, because once the Eurobond investor confidence bubble is busted, then you're going to go back to default. So that is what has been sparking the positive change in Kenya's economy, according to me. You can tell me yours on the comments. And K. Williams is telling me, could it be all that money Job is making and spending helping the economy grow? Might be. Might be Joby's contribution. And he says that is good news. It is, of course, good news. And as much as we are trying to understand the reasoning behind, it is good news to the common citizen in the village and in, the one that earns $1 a day. They don't care about the systems, the mechanics behind. All they know is that the price of corn flour has gone down and they're happy for that. All they care is about the price of fuel has gone down. So they don't really understand the mechanics. They don't even want to understand the mechanics, or that the government might have manufactured a whole crisis for the economy to look bad and then for them to solve it and make it look like it was them who solved the problems. So it is good news. I agree with you, K. Williams. And I don't know for how long it is going to last. I hope the theatrics last longer, because it is beneficial for the ones in the bottom of the pyramid. When the theatrics start, they're the ones who suffer. When the government starts manufacturing chaos, manufacturing crisis, they're the ones who suffer. And when they solve it, they're the ones who benefit. But how I wish we could have an honest government that we can understand the mechanics behind. We can know why is there a positive shift all of a sudden? Why was there a negative shift in the first place? What is happening? But that is what has been happening in Kenya. That was me giving my 2 cents. And so let us look at what has been happening in other countries in Africa that are not theatrics. And the first one is what Maria is talking about, with Nigeria reopening borders with Niger. I'm not going to talk a lot about that because I'm sure Maria will have talked about this deeply. So Nigeria has announced the lifting of sanctions against Niger, reopening its border with the Sahelian nation effective immediately. So this was after Nigeria had initially closed down the border, but so it reopened the border. And this is a big win for the Sahel Alliance, which has stood up strong against the threats, the intimidations from, I don't know, Tinubu, from ECOWAS, from the French, from the whole world. They stood to their on their feet, and it looked like it's bearing fruits. And now the other countries are realizing that the ones who are losing. And what this means is there's a shift in the in the in the in the in the table, in the discussion table, in the it looks like initially Niger and the other Sahel Alliance countries are the one on the begging side, but it looks like now the tables are turning and they're the ones at an advantage, because it started with threats from Tinubu, threats from ECOWAS. Right now they are pleading. So I don't know if you've noticed the shift from threats to pleads to pleas. First it was, you either stop this or we are going to send our armed force, and right now it is, brothers, do not leave. So there has been a shift in the table. And a big shout out to the Sahel Alliance and to Niger to Niger for really standing up to their on their feet. And moving on, that was what was happening in Niger. You can check out Maria's stream later for much in-depth analysis of that. In other news, Kenya has reaffirmed its commitment to deploy a police force to Haiti. Kenyan President William Ruto said Wednesday that the country will still send a UN-backed multinational police force to help quell gang violence in Haiti, even though the Prime Minister resigned. Ruto said on a post in X, formerly Twitter, that the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken had briefed him. He said they had a long phone conversation with Blinken, and Blinken had briefed him on the latest development in Haiti, and that he assured Blinken of Kenya's commitment to deploy a police force to Haiti. He says, and I quote, "I assured Secretary Blinken that Kenya will take leadership of the UN security support mission in Haiti to restore peace and security." Kenya's Foreign Affairs PS, that is Principal Secretary Korir Singoi, on Tuesday said Kenya had put on hold the deployment of 1,000 of its policemen until a clear administration is in place. So it looks like the narration shifted after Blinken called Ruto. So initially the Foreign Affairs Principal Secretary, his name is Korir Singoi, on Tuesday had said that Kenya had put on hold the deployment until a clear administration is in place. But after the phone conversation between President William Ruto and Senator Anthony Blinken, that is the US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, Ruto looked like he changed the narrative, and now he says the mission is going to go on. This is even after Ariel Henry resigned, but they say that a new presidential council is going to be created. So those are not so good news. It looks like not the news I expected to hear. I thought that, but knowing the kind of politicians, I remind myself very fast that, yeah, those are the news that you expect to hear. And so let us now head to Libya, where at least 50 migrants died on a boat as they were trying to cross over. Survivors rescued from a deflating rubber dinghy in the central Mediterranean say about 50 people who left Libya with them a week ago died during the journey. The ship, its name was Ocean Viking, spotted the rubber dinghy with 25 people on board on Wednesday. 2 of them were unconscious and were evacuated by the Italian army for treatment. The other 23 people are in serious condition, exhausted, dehydrated, and burned by the fuel on board the boat. So the figure is in addition to the 279 deaths that have occurred in the Mediterranean since January 1st. So since January 1st, we are in March, by the way, 227 people have died trying to cross over the Mediterranean. Some say the boat left Zawiya, Libya, with 75 people on board, including women and at least one toddler. The engine broke shortly after departure, and they found themselves with no option. So those are 50 people dead, adding to the 279 who have died trying to cross over the Mediterranean. Other sad news from Africa. And K. William say you have to share good news. Sometimes it has to be balanced, yeah, and that is why I started with the positive news from Kenya, in that there has been a positive change, a positive shift in Kenya's economy, which Jibajaba missed, but I'm sure he's going to catch the recap. We are talking about the positive shift in Kenya's economy, with the price of petroleum products going down, the Kenya shilling gaining massively against the US dollar, and the price of basic commodities and other things going down. And of course, it looks like the money supply is coming back. There is more money in supply in the economy right now. So that was Libya. Let us now head to West Africa, with Nigeria's Bola Tinubu saying they won't pay ransom for kidnapped victims. This comes after more than 287 students were kidnapped. So Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has ordered security forces not to pay ransom for the release of close to 200 students who were kidnapped from a school in northwestern Kaduna State last week. Mr. Tinubu instead directed security agencies to ensure the release of all kidnapped victims without any payments to the kidnappers. I never agree with Tinubu in many things, but I think for once I do not support the government paying ransom to release people who've been abducted, because this is going to create a trend, and Nigeria started that trend. It happened in 2014 with the school girls who were kidnapped. It started with it has been happening. You know, when you start that trend where people can just kidnap school kids and you pay ransom, then that is what is going to be happening. You're going to create that trend, and now every rebel group, every military force in Nigeria will be going after kids because they know they're going to get money from Tinubu. How I wish Nigeria had a stronger army, had a better leader who could command a better army and actually go down and rescue those kids without paying a single shilling. And so I don't know what is going to happen to the kids, because I doubt in Nigeria's army ability to rescue the kids. Not that I hate Nigeria, but considering what happened in 2014 with the school girls who were kidnapped. So Mr. Tinubu said that they are not going to pay for anything, but they are going to make sure the kids are released. Earlier, gunmen had kidnapped 286 kids and staff from a school in northern Nigeria, and they have demanded a total of 1 billion naira, that is 620 US dollars, for their release. The school children, some older students and members of the school, were abducted on March 7th in the town of Kuriga in Nigeria's northwest Kaduna State, in the first mass kidnapping in the country since 2021. So they made a total of 1 billion naira ransom demand for all the pupils. They gave an ultimatum to pay the ransom within 20 days, effective from the date of the kidnap, and they said they will kill the students and the staff if the ransom demand is not met. So the government of Nigeria has 20 days to pay 1 billion naira, or 300 kids. 300 school kids are going to be killed. There have been several mass kidnappings over the last week, including the seizure on Tuesday night of more than 60 people from a village, also in Kaduna State. Over the last 3 years, hundreds of students have been abducted. Some of the hostages have been released following negotiations with authority, although officials deny ransom payments are made. A law was passed in 2022 in Nigeria that banned paying ransom to kidnappers. So I really don't know what is going to happen with kids. The government of Nigeria has 20 days, or they are going to be killed. and Tinubu has said they're not gonna pay. So it's now a question of, will the Nigerian army, police, security forces be able to rescue the kids in 20 days? We're going to follow on that development, and all we can do is hope for the best. When it comes to Nigeria and Tinubu and most of the countries in Africa, all we can do is hope for the best. Let us end with Liberia, where Liberians an anniversary to remember the people who died 10 years ago after an Ebola epidemic that really affected the country. On the second Wednesday of March each year, the country observes National Decoration Day, a time where Liberians gather at various cemeteries to commemorate their departed relatives. This year's observance brought relatives to Disco Hall Safe, that is a burial site in Marigibi County, to mourn the victims of Ebola. About 100 people died in that, were buried at this site that they held the memorial today, that is the Disco Hill Safe Burial Site in Marigibi County. More than 4,500 bodies were cremated and placed at that site. A total of 4,810 people died in Liberia when the virus hit. That is 10 years ago. 4,810 people died from that Ebola epidemic 10 years ago in Liberia, and today they were just but commemorating and having an anniversary for them. I hope such an epidemic never hit Africa again. One country that has been getting hit every now and then by Ebola. We can't stay a year before hearing a new Ebola case has been found in Uganda. But even with our healthcare systems, I really hope we never see an epidemic like the one that happened in Liberia. 4,810 people dying is not something small. So that happened in 2014. And that was what was happening in Liberia. And we have now looked at everything that was happening throughout the whole of Africa, from Kenya with its positive change in the economy, which, just a recap for the ones who came late, the Kenya shilling has been gaining massively against the US dollar. The price of fuel has been going down. The price of basic commodities has been going down. And so we were trying to look at what could be the reason. That is why there's still this graph on your screen. We were trying to look at what could be the reason behind it. And our job is coming up in a bit with Kamlesh. They tell me they're going to have a musical show. So I hope you join them in the next few minutes. And Jiba Jaba was asking me, can you do a Feel Good Friday segment? I'll check on that, Jiba Jaba. I'll consult and try and do that, because we always have so many bad news throughout the week. Killed in where? Killings in DRC, killings in Ethiopia, Tigray, killings in Sudan, killings in the Mediterranean of Africans trying to cross over Spain. And it will be good for us to have a Friday where we don't talk about murders and killings and corrupt politicians and theatrics and political insanity. And K. Williams asked, do you hear about the Kenyan cult leader who killed 191 people? Yep, he's still in custody. He was to be arraigned in court yesterday, but he did not appear in court because he said he was getting mistreated in custody. This is a man who killed more than it was that. If you are talking about the one that I know, that was the one from the Kenyan coastal region. His name was Mackenzie. It was way more than that. The numbers are bordering 600 people, because he was telling them not to eat, so they were not eating. He was telling them not to eat, and so they starved themselves to death. So he's still in custody and he's gonna be arraigned in court. He was to be arraigned in court yesterday, but he did not appear. He said he actually once said that they were not giving him food in custody, and people are shocked because, why are you asking for food when you told your people not to eat? we are gonna see what is going to happen to him. And Jiba Jaba tells me to take care. Take care to Jiba Jaba. And so I hope you enjoy the rest of your day if you are watching or listening from abroad. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your night if you are watching or listening from Kenya. That has been all I had today on the Black Hot Fire News Update. Hope to see you tomorrow, same time at 7 to 7:30. Enjoy the rest of your day. It's always a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen.